see. Devotees think, well, I want to be known as the great scholar. I want to be like the big authority around here. So I'll study Sanskrit and then start quoting all these shlokas and like, oh, I'll be the big cheese, you know, big cheese in the ashram. Yeah. But that's not how it works. Krishna knows. Krishna's in your heart. If by studying Sanskrit, you're able to perceive the finer, deeper meanings in the shlokas and the prayers of the advanced devotees, and in this way enhance your devotional service, then Krishna will support it very nicely. But if your motive for studying Sanskrit is simply personal name and fame, power or prestige, then Krishna won't support it, and you won't be able to keep on the path. We've seen this so many times. Or somebody will think, oh, I want to do more service, better service than anybody else. And so they'll get on this big passionate trip, you know, and they'll over-endeavor, and what happens? They fall down, and then they lose their taste for devotional service. They can even lose their taste for the holy name, which is tragic. Because this is a kind of offense, you see. What one is doing is spending a lot of energy that could be used to serve Krishna and please Krishna, but trying to please his own false ego and his own sense of self-importance instead. So we see a lot of devotees do this, especially in the early stages, neophyte stages of devotional service. Well, what's the cure? You come up with a regulated system of daily service, and you stick to it, and you don't deviate from it. You don't take on any additional service that you can't sustain. The trick is, that's the dog. You take on just enough service that you're fully engaged, but not too much service so that you're over-engaged. You leave enough time for rest, enough time for relaxation, or whatever you need to keep your service steady. This is very important. Otherwise, you won't be able to maintain. You won't be able to sustain. This is a marathon. This is a long-distance run. And the key, if anybody has ever done any running, the key to doing a marathon is to establish a pace and stick to it. But if your pace is too fast, you won't make it. You won't be able to get through the whole race. You'll fall. You'll have to stop and rest. And if your pace is too slow, well, then you're not really living up to your personal potential, you see. So you have to find the right pace for yourself. You know, it's nice if you can chant 64 rounds. It's wonderful if you can chant 64 rounds. But not everybody can do that. Realistically. You know, we have to be practical. We have to be realistic. And find a standard of devotional service that we can maintain. Even if it's only chanting 8 rounds a day. If that's what you can do and remain steady, then that's what you should do. Now, that said, one should also be progressive. And within that amount of service that one can perform, easily, repeatably, steadily, day after day, month after month, you should constantly strive to increase the quality of that service. You see, a little bit of service done at a very high quality is much more pleasing to Krishna than a lot of service that's just done any old way. Hurry up, slipshod, low quality. It's not the quantity of service that we do, it's the quality. Our material conditioning fixes us up or presets us to measure things, measure the value of things in terms of quantity. If I make $200,000 next year, that's better than if I make $100,000 like I did this year. So we're trained up to think like that. We're conditioned like that. But what's the use of making $200,000 a year if you're miserable? If you wear yourself out doing it, what's the point of it? You can't enjoy it. So we're saying, do the amount of service that you can do and still maintain good consciousness. And Krishna will be far more pleased than if you do lots and lots of service, but it's in terrible state of consciousness. So be careful. Another thing is practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them, and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. Now, why would somebody do that? Politics. I follow the rules and regulations strictly, and you don't. And so they get to, this is when there's a mood or a established standard of fundamentalism in a spiritual group. When they think, wrongly by the way, that the measure of your devotional service is simply by how well you follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures. Certainly the rules and regulations of the scriptures are important, but they're not all important. You don't get, like Srila Prabhupada one time said, this is not the International Society for Rules and Regulations. What it means is that we follow the rules and regulations, again, to our ability to perform them regularly, steadily, comfortably, to sustain them for a long period of time. If you can't do that, if you find yourself getting burned out, you have to slack off. Or it's another kind of overendeavor. But this is really specifically what they're talking about here, or what Rupa Goswami is talking about here, is a person who is simply a devotee in a formal way, and they're not really in their heart. See, they don't really love Krishna. They're trying to one-up somebody else and show that, oh, I'm stricter than you, I can chant more rounds than you, I can follow more rules and regs. There's a mantra for opening the door, a mantra for walking down the street, a mantra for waking up, a mantra for going to the bathroom, and I know all of them. Well, see what kind of mentality that is. It's not very devotional, really, is it? He's not coming from love, he's coming from competitiveness, wanting to put other people down, other devotees. And Krishna doesn't like that very much. He's not very pleased by that. So we should avoid that mentality and practice the rules and regulations, but practice them for the purpose of developing the desire to love Krishna. That's what the result of practicing the rules and regulations should be. If it's anything else, then we're not practicing them properly. So the other thing to be aware of is following the rules and regulations whimsically or working independently, like establishing your own set of rules and regulations, different from the ones in the scriptures. Or sometimes you accept the rules and regulations and sometimes you reject them, according to your mood. Or thinking that they don't apply to you for some reason. Well, guess what? They apply to everybody. So we have to be humble before the wisdom of the scriptures and the great devotees. We have to accept that those rules and regulations are in the scriptures for a good reason. Until we can show that we have reached the stage of anartha nivritti, where there's no more bad qualities, no more unwanted activities or thoughts, then we have no right to think that we are beyond the rules and regulations. Actually, even a person who has achieved anartha nivritti doesn't think like that. But they just become so occupied with their loving service, their internal service to Krishna, that they're not so strict about following so many, little rules and regulations. If you ever read Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is the official book of rules and regulations for Vaishnavas, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, there's so many rules and regulations, you know. You can't even begin, a Westerner, forget it, you know. You can't even begin to follow all those rules and regulations. You know, so it's like you have to get up at a certain hour, just when a certain muhurta begins, a certain time period, as measured by the movements of the sun and the moon, the nakshatras and the tithis and all this stuff. I mean, without a background in Vedic astronomy, you can't even figure out what time to get up in the morning. Or what time to eat, or what time to do anything. So, you know, unless you have a very strong background in Brahminical qualifications, you wouldn't be able to do even the first thing and the first rule, the first thing in the morning, you know, what to speak of the rest of the day. So this